Okay, so there you go. Here's the essential question. How do you solve quadratic equations? And here's our first question. In order for us to solve our quadratic equation, we gotta actually first factor it, and then we gotta make it equal to 0 and solve it, right? Okay, so let's do our big X. I want you to understand that this factoring thing is really important. Usually when we used to have algebra 1 and then geometry and then algebra 2, you guys would learn how to factor second semester of algebra 1. But then nobody would get it because they started too young. And that's why now we have this in math too, because now you're more mature and you're able to handle this, okay? All right, so now let's do this. First thing we have to do is the big X, if we know that we can factor it, right? Okay, let's do the big X, okay? I really like how she's feeling very comfortable, right? And I really want you to feel comfortable and lie down and do your work. Okay, so there you go. And then we have two fraction bars right here. So what number are you supposed to put on top, guys? 2 times -3, and that would be what? -6, okay? So then what number am I supposed to put at the bottom? So then we put -6 on top, and what goes at the bottom, guys? This number right here. If you don't see anything, that's going to be a 1. Right? So you put the 1 down here. So what we're doing right now is looking for two numbers that we can multiply to get -6 and then add to get 1, right? So what are the two numbers we can get? And I told you can always use the factor tree. And you always start with 1. 1 times 6 is 6. And then the number that's bigger than 1 after 1 is 2. So 2 times 3 is 6. And you can tell that 2 and 3, if you add or subtract, you could actually get 1, right? So let's think about this because we have a negative. When we multiply two numbers and then we get a negative answer, that means one of them is a negative number, right? But when we add the two numbers together and then we get a positive number, that means the bigger number is positive, right? So you know what we're going to do? We're going to say this is +3 and -2. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Right? The bigger number has to be positive. Okay, and then one of them has to be a negative number. So there you go, -2 and +3. Okay, now what number am I supposed to put on top of my fraction bar right here? Yes, over here on top of my fraction bar, I'm supposed to put the 2 because that is my leading coefficient, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 on top. All right, so let's go. Now we have to find out which numbers we have to put at the bottom, right? Which two numbers do you think we're supposed to put at the bottom now? Yes, our answers. I was grading you guys, and in first period, we had the most problems here, right? Okay, and you guys, by mistake, put like a -6 and a 1 at the bottom, right? But then when I looked at your work, you got the two correct numbers, okay? But you forgot your process, and so you put -6 and 1, and that is wrong. Right? Make sure you put your two answers, which is -2 and 3. Now from here, what are you supposed to do next? You're supposed to simplify. So you see, if you didn't get chapter 2, then you're going to have a hard time here as well. So please make sure that you refine your skills from chapter 2. Math is a continuation, and if you don't do well this year, it's going to be more difficult next year, okay? So please make sure you learn everything as time passes by. By the end of the semester, you should know perfectly well how to do stuff like this, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and create two parentheses, okay? What letter are we playing with, guys? Over here? X's, right? So then I'm going to put my X here on top. On top, right? And so now I have X minus 1, right? And then 2x plus 3. Another unfortunate thing that I noticed with a lot of you, you forgot to, you canceled, right? You simplified, but then for your answer, you still put 2x minus 2. That made me really sad because I know that you know what you're doing, but you weren't quite clear, so I still had to mark you wrong, okay? So please make sure you follow the correct procedures, okay? Now, in order for us to solve, the first step was to factor, and we already learned all this part, okay? And so now, in order for us to solve this, we gotta make sure that each parenthesis is equal to 0, okay? So I want you to think about this. If this whole thing in this parenthesis is one number, and if all these stuff in one parenthesis is one number, we're multiplying basically two numbers, A and B, aren't we? Right? Okay, so if you want to get the answer 0, which one has to be 0? A or B, guys? That was a trick question. The answer is A could be 0, or B could be 0, or both of them could be 0. Because if this whole thing was 0, 0 times whatever this is going to equal 0, right? If this whole thing was 0, 0 times whatever that is also going to equal 0. Do you understand me? And if you have 0 times 0, you'll still get 0, right? So therefore, your answer is going to be this whole thing is equal to 0 or that whole thing is equal to 0. So let's continue. Uh-oh. All you're going to do now is say x minus 1 is equal to 0 and 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. So now it's just one more step, right? Okay. So let's keep going. We're going to add 1 to both sides. We did this in Math 1. So x is equal to 1. Over here, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides, and 2x is equal to negative 3. And so now we're going to divide both sides by 2. I know that by now you guys are so good in math because you're already in Math 2 that I don't have to show you all these steps, right? So there you go. My two answers are what? My two answers are x is equal to 1 or x is equal to negative 3 over 2. All right? And this was the part that you actually had to kind of sort of figure out on the test when I asked you to graph, right? Yes. Yes, but okay, usually when you're in middle school, your teacher likes you to put it into mixed numbers. In high school, we like improper fractions, okay? So, yes, you are absolutely right. Thank you for telling me it's negative 1.5. However, I like you to keep it as negative 3 over 2, okay? All right. Here you go. I want you to go ahead and solve these 5 questions, okay? Give me the answers, and if you're having a difficult time, let me know. 5 minutes before the bell, you know what we're supposed to do, right? Okay, this is all we are doing today, so what I want you to do is, if you don't know how to factor, and therefore you did not do a good job on the test, the people who failed the last test, please make sure you raise your hand so I can come and help you right now. The people who passed and you get it, then you're good. Just work on your own and then try and help other people around you who's struggling, okay? Ready? Go.